I'm in the process of making a ring. This is actually going to be for a YouTube video once I have everything, once I have all the components ready. I'm going to make a YouTube video about setting this particular ring. And I think it's going to be really useful for some people. So I'm just in the process of making the ring, and I'm not recording it for content or anything like that, but I figured since I'm doing all this, why not do a live? So this is basically a simple cabochon setting, and I'm gonna be setting this very large, very beautiful star ruby. So I've got my bezel, a really pretty thick bezel. That's the point of the YouTube video when I make it later. And I'm just, so it's, you know, basically a very simple bezel at the moment. I'm just filing the back of it so that the back plate will be curved so it fits nicely on my finger instead of having a flat back. But I'm just gonna move you guys for a minute because I want to be able to see comments. All right. So I go in with a half round file and I just file the back of the bezel so that it's curved, so that it fits like nicely on your finger in a half round shape. So it's important when you're doing something like this, where you're taking away so much metal, that you make your bezel wall height big enough so that when you actually put the gemstone in there, there's enough that you can still fold it over and lock your gemstone in place. And a good way to kind of check based on the size that you're going to make your ring is to just kind of put it on the mandrel. And if you have a lot of space in between the sides of the bottom of your bezel walls, then you have a lot more filing to do. There we go. Have an issue, like whenever I make bezels, I tend to make them really thick. I like a thicker looking bezel. Yeah, I like a thicker looking bezel, so I just tend to do that, but I don't know, maybe some people do like thinner bezels. It's definitely easier to make and work with thinner bezels, but I like the look of thicker bezels. So I do thicker bezels. I originally started with this. This was going to be my original bezel, and then I'm like, this is not going to give me enough material to create that curved backing. So then this one's about double the width of that. So I realized that this morning, like I really need to make that a little bit thicker or taller so I can chop away at it. I know this isn't fun. This isn't the most fun, exciting thing to watch. It's pretty repetitive, but you can always go in and do this with like a ball burr if you're really proficient at knowing exactly how much to chop away at. But I think right now I'll go in and speed up the process a little bit with some sandpaper, like we'll see how this goes. Okay. My sandpaper fell off. I just make my own sanding stick. Sanding sticks and sanding mandrels, I guess you would call this. And I just kind of tape it onto like a broken bit. Sometimes it unravels, and that's okay. Just gotta re-stick it back on. Let's see. So just remember which way you have your flex shaft spinning and tape it so that it goes with it. Because I used to do this and I would do it the wrong way and I have to put my flex shaft in reverse, which is totally fine. But then you're constantly switching between forward and reverse, and now I know. Tape it the right way. All right, let's see how that goes. Very good. Back to work. The sandpaper is really good at smoothing, but I feel like I still need to take out quite a bit more with a file. So we go back to filing. Okay. It's really a meticulous job. It's not necessarily the most exciting thing in the world, but slow and steady makes beautiful jewelry. That should be my motto. We're getting there. I wish I could just, like, you know, go all on this. This file does have teeth in both directions, so I'm not ruining my file. You know, you either have files with teeth in one direction, and that's when you only go upward, or you have it in both directions and you can go up or down. And you also want to make sure that you're not going to have it sideways, like tilt it to one side. So always check what you're doing. Okay, I can always come back to that. So in order to have my back plate nice and rounded, I use a swage block. It's going to be kind of difficult over here because this is not as stable as that. Appointment reminder. Monday. Oh, is that right now? Oh, Central State. Okay, I have 1 hour before I have an appointment video. So yeah, I use a swage block. I have this thin piece of sheet that I rolled out, and you literally will just, depending on how you, is this gonna fit? Yeah. So make sure before you start whacking your back plate into the curved shape that you understand how you're placing your gemstone on it, so you're not hitting it the opposite direction and then you don't have enough material to fix it. So like this, oops, I need to hit this like this. Okay. Let's see how this, I might do this back here just so I don't like destroy my work desk. And you know what? I think I'm gonna chop this part off because I don't need it, and it's just gonna be a lot of extra while I'm hitting. So don't need this, just gonna use this one. And that'll make it easier. Okay. You guys can't really see what I'm doing. All right, let me move you over a little bit. Oh, you know what? Here. There you go, kind of. Okay, so I've got my metal plate and my swage block. I'm just going to use one of my punches from my dapping set, and we're going to hit it so it starts to curve. Oh, don't get stuck. Okay. It's very dark. There we go. So now that's curved. So when it sits on your finger, it sits flush instead of laying flat, and then you don't have, like, you'll have space in between. But we gotta check. So I'm gonna need to continue filing because there's a gap in between my back plate and my bezel wall. So let's come back over here and keep filing. So can I show you better here? Maybe you guys can see it better here. So I have my curved back plate and I have my bezel. That's where I was filing, so it's got that rounded part. But when I lay it on here, it still has that gap there. So we're gonna file it so that when it lays on the back plate, it lays flush. And then we get a nice clean solder joint. All right. And that's why it's really important to make sure that you have enough height on your bezel wall so that when you put this on your back plate and then you put your gemstone inside of it, that you still have room to fold metal over your gemstone. Otherwise, oops, there we go. Otherwise you're in trouble. Now you have to remake your bezel. Let's see. Just gonna keep on checking. We're getting there. It's getting better, but we still have that little gap. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, we're just gonna keep on filing. Let me show you what I mean. So before I had my swage block, I had created this ring, which I love. This is actually a star sapphire. We're making a star ruby now, but you see how the bottom, the back plate is flat. So when it sits on you, it sits kind of flat. But with this beautiful opal ring, I had my swage block, so I made the back plate rounded. So now that inside of the ring is completely round. So when it sits on your finger, it sits nice and rounded. Can you kind of tell? You can kind of tell. And that's what I'm going for with this. Okay. Almost there. Can you see? The gap is getting less and less. So that's good. And this is an oval gemstone, but I don't have an oval mandrel that gets to this size. So I'm just using my round mandrel, and then I am adjusting the shape as I need to with pliers to make it oval. Yeah, so it's a bit round now and I need to adjust it. But I just want to get the fit. Okay, that looks good. I'm just gonna open it a tiny bit, just a little bit more oval. Like this is like millimeters, like you work ever so slightly at a like a tiny bit at a time, just to make sure you're not over shaping something. Whoops. And it's always good when you're working with a bezel to see if you can put it in from the top, because once your back plate's on, you're not going to be able to put it in from the bottom. So see if it just falls in on the top, and this does. So we're good. Our shape is good. And now we just need to go back to rounding that a little bit. Oops. Actually, I think I pulled it a little bit off to the side when I shaped it. So I need to reshape it so that where I've filed is the true top and bottom. Otherwise, it's not going to sit right, and I don't want that. Okay. So I just kind of rounded it out a little bit, and then make sure when you're shaping it back to oval that you grab where you've filed. So that when you're pushing and you're making it oval, you're making that top and bottom part. There we go. Oops. Cannot grab this thing today. Okay. Oh, that's upside down. This is a very weirdly shaped ruby. Let's see if I can show you. It domes kind of like this instead of symmetrically. Like it's higher on this side than it is on that side. And I don't care. I'm keeping this for myself. I'm literally making this YouTube video to show how different tools can be used to set bezels this thick. So I'm not worried about how the gemstone's gonna look, because this is a recycled gemstone. It's from someone's old jewelry that they no longer wanted, and I just get to use it to play around with. But I'm keeping it for me because it's a beautiful star ruby. And it's just gonna be a little bit different setting it because it's so weirdly shaped. All right, back to filing. Excuse me. I wish I had a flashlight to show you what this star ruby looks like. If you don't know what a star ruby or a star sapphire looks like, when you shine a direct, intense light on the cabochon, it creates a star, like a 6-pointed star. Some of them, I believe, can be 4 or 8-pointed. This is 6, but it's really beautiful. So if you don't know what it looks like, you can always go and look at the star sapphire ring video that I made, and it'll show you exactly what I mean. All right, let's see. Not yet. Tiny bit more. You see that little gap? That's not going to solder. So I might actually just hit this a little bit more on my swage block to bend it a little bit more and see, because I'm starting to take away a little more than I'm comfortable with on my bezel walls. So let's see how this goes. This is such a handy tool, a swage block. If you don't have one and you fabricate jewelry, I highly recommend getting one. Okay. That did not help. So I'm going to open it back up. And I really should go anneal this, but I'm not going to. It's okay. Okay, that's better. Okay. A little bit more. I might bring out my round file a little bit. Whenever I use this and my mini mandrel, I feel like they're wands. All right. Oops, that would be bad. All right, so now my file is starting to touch the very edges of the white, the narrow part of the back plate, or the bezel. So can you see that gap is getting less and less? But we still got to make sure that we have metal to fold over our trimstone, and we have plenty. So we keep going. Oh my God, it's stuck. Oh, there we go. If you were ever like, why does handmade jewelry cost so much? This is why. It takes forever to make. One piece can take days. And the issue with fabrication is if I make a mistake on this bezel, I have to restart the entire bezel. I can't like melt pieces and glue it back together or solder it back together. Like, you have to restart. So it's not for the faint of heart. Fabrication is not for the faint of heart, but it's definitely worth it. So close. If there's light passing through, it's not gonna solder. I mean, you might be able to like glob solder on there so that it fills the gap. I don't like to do that. I like to have a nice tight fit. So we're gonna keep going just a little bit more. It's astonishing how much solder people use when as long as you have a tight fit, you don't really need much. But I did just have to order new hard solder because I use hard solder for pretty much everything. For example, if you've seen my Zodiac collection, I'll show you one that I've already revealed, so it's not a surprise. So like this, that's a solder join, that's a solder join, and then there's solder joins here and here, and then on the little loop that connects it to the bail. And I've done all of them with hard solder because I don't like the way medium and easy solder spreads. I prefer using the higher heat and a solder that melts at a higher temperature. I'll be honest, I tried to use medium solder. I'm like, let me just try and, you know, on attaching it to the bail, use medium solder. And I don't like how it spreads. So I'm more comfortable with silver using hard solder on 98% of the soldering operations. And it's more like 99%. I very, very rarely use medium solder. I don't remember the last time I did. So if you're ever like, I don't like using one particular, you can use the same solder for the entire job, whatever you're making, as long as you understand your flame control and how your solder moves. And a very helpful thing to know is that every time that you heat solder, it hardens it slightly. So if your first soldering job, you know, goes well, and then you use the same solder on the second soldering job, and you're heating that first soldering joint another time, it's hardening it. It's making it melt at a higher, oh crud, half an hour, okay. It's making it melt at a higher temperature because you're melting away, you're burning off some of the zinc that's in there that causes it to melt at a lower melting temperature. So every time you melt a little bit more of that zinc away, you're making it harder and harder to melt that solder. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I got you. I have a reminder on my phone. So yeah, that's why you can absolutely use the same solder for an entire project as long as you understand how it works. Come on, please. Pretty, pretty, please. No. Ugh. Okay, a little bit more. That's when you see people with like sanding belts and you're like, ugh. I don't have a sanding belt. Not that I would use it for this, but. Let's see.